you want to speak English more clearly and concisely, I'm going to give you 7 tips. Are you ready? Well then, let's jump right in. Tip number 1. This is very important. Use signpost language. Again, use signpost language. What is signpost language? In other words, you're going to guide your listeners through your speech with clear verbal markers. Listen, when I say this first tip, we have 6 more, but this first tip is so important because each and every native English speaker uses this tip. So, how can you do this? Here is a breakdown. The first thing is to start with phrases like first, next, or finally to help listeners follow your sequence of ideas. Think about it. Even I just used this marker, this phrase. I said first. Native English speakers use these markers, these signposts as we speak. Here's the second way you can do this. Use transition phrases such as for example, or in contrast, or similarly to show relationships between ideas. Let's say you're speaking on the topic of travel and you say, I lived in South Korea. I did. And you're speaking about Korea and you can say, similarly, Japan also has ... You've mentioned things in Korea. Maybe they're stationery. I love stationery, by the way. Pens, come on. Woo-wee. And then you say, similarly, Japan also offers great stationery products. Again, these phrases help the person to follow along as they're listening to you. And it also, using this technique, again, using signpost language, also helps you be more concise, more clear, and speak English more fluently. What about this one? Indicate shifts in topic with phrases like moving on to, or turning to, or let's now discuss. Again, tip number 1 is all about using the signpost language. You're literally directing someone through your brain. Listen, you have many thoughts because you're intelligent. You have many ideas because you're amazing. You have many things you want to say, and the person listening to you wants to go on the journey with you. But just like when you're traveling somewhere, there are signposts. There are different things to let you know where you are on the journey. Signpost language is important as you are speaking. First, okay, we're on the first point. Next, okay, we're on the next point. In conclusion, okay, we're wrapping up. Use signpost language. Tip number 1. Now, before we go to tip number 2, I want to give you this bonus tip, baby. So I have the English with Tiffani app, and I want you to download it because in this app, each week, you will find lessons to help you. You can download the app for free, but I want to specifically show you right here, if you're watching, the weekly English fluency lessons with teacher Tiffani. Each week, you will find lessons that coincide with my YouTube lessons. For example, we are in 2025 right now. You will find each of the lessons for this year. Each lesson from each week, you can click on, let's click on this one right here, and you can practice. You can review what I taught you in this YouTube English lesson, or if you're watching on the podcast, you can practice what you've learned. So again, download the English with Tiffani app and continue studying with me. You can download it totally for free. Now we're going, after the bonus, to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is implement the rule of 3. Listen, baby, I love this rule. It's very important. The rule of 3. So you're going to organize information in groups of 3 for maximum impact and memorability. Again, when you group things in 3, something happens in the brain of the person listening to you. They're able to grasp what you're saying. So again, implement the rule of 3. Now you're asking, Tiff, how do I do this? I got you. Don't you worry. How to do this. So you're going to structure your main arguments or examples in sets of 3 whenever possible. Let's say you're speaking about your favorite, let's do your favorite television programs. Instead of saying 16 television programs, pick 3. Say your top 3 television programs. Let's say you're speaking about your favorite drink, right? Juice or soda. I don't drink alcohol. But you can say, oh, I love apple, I love mango, and I love pineapple juice. Or you can say, ooh, I love Sprite, I love Fanta, and I love grape soda. Again, grouping them in 3s. Here's the second way you can utilize this tip. You can use 3-part lists to make your points more memorable and impactful. I actually just gave you a few lists, right, for the soda and for the juice. Again, it's very powerful to implement the rule of 3. You could also apply the pattern of setup, confrontation, and resolution. 3 parts: setup, confrontation, and resolution when telling stories or presenting cases. Remember, at the very end of each lesson, I tell you a story for story time. So don't miss it at the very end. But I usually give you the setting, the setup, then a confrontation, something happens, and then the resolution. 3 parts. Again, tip number 2 is implement the rule of 3, my friend. Tip number 2. Tip number 2 is, and we're calling these tips or steps to help you speak English fluently. So tips or steps. Here we go. Practice active listening. Now you want to improve your own speaking, right? You want to speak English fluently. In order to do this, you have to become a better listener. When you become a better listener, you'll also become a better speaker. So how can you do this? Here we go. How can you do this? Observe how effective speakers organize and deliver their messages. Think about your favorite speaker, your favorite teacher. Hopefully it's me. And think about how the individuals actually organize their thoughts. How do they present the information? As you're dissecting, as you're breaking down, as you're picking out the important parts, your brain will naturally try to apply those same things when you speak English. Another way, pay attention to the speaking techniques that capture your interest and adapt them for your own use. Hey, I really like when Tiff tells stories, or I really like when Tiff gives 3 reasons, or I really like when Tiff gives 3 examples. The things that catch your attention, the thing that grips you, the things that grab your attention or your interests, try to mimic them. The third way is analyze what makes certain speakers clear and concise, and then incorporate those elements into your speech. What is it about that person that makes it so easy for me to understand them? What are they doing? For example, something you'll notice if you're watching me right now on YouTube as I'm teaching this lesson. Something that I do all the time is I use my hands. And you've probably been watching me the entire time. You've noticed it, but I want you to think about this. I purposely use my hands when I speak. Why? Because I want to enhance your experience. As you're watching me, as I'm teaching you, when I say I'm giving you 3 elements, when I say here, this is number 5, something happens when what you're hearing, what you're listening to matches what you see. The brain is connecting these things and it makes it easier to understand. So think about the individuals you enjoy listening to. If you're watching them, watch them closely as you listen to them and try to mimic, try to emulate, try to copy what they are doing. Make sense? Yeah, you got it. All right, now let's move on to tip number 4. Employ the bottom line up front technique. Say it again. Start using the bottom line up front technique. In other words, start your conclusion first, then provide supporting details. You start with the end and then you go backwards. They do this in movies sometimes. They show you the final scene and what happens. It opens up this curiosity. Hold up, what? Wait a minute. Why is this woman crying on the boat? What happened? And then the movie starts. and it fills in those holes. Like, what happened? Remember, English fluency, it's not just about the words you've used. It's about your ability to convey an idea, to convey a thought, to share your ideas in a clear and concise way. One tip, one strategy is to start using the bottom line upfront technique. So how do you do this? Here we go. How can you do this? Begin with your main point or conclusion before explaining how you arrived at it. For example, you've heard me say this before. The 5 W's method is the most powerful method to help you speak English fluently. Now, if you've probably heard it because you're my student. But let's say someone new comes up and they're like, well, what's the 5 W's method? Immediately they're curious. I've given the conclusion. The 5 W's method is amazing. Who, what, when, where, and why. But how do you apply it? How did she come up with this? Why does Tiffany think that's the best method? And then I provide information. Again, bottom line up front. Or you can use phrases like, the key takeaway is, or what this means is, to highlight your main message, to highlight the most important point, and then you give the support. It's basically like working backwards. Bottom line up front. Or you can structure your speech as an inverted pyramid with the most important information first. Inverted. So a pyramid is usually like this. Inverted. You see that? Inverted. And tell the most important information first. All right? Element tip number 4. Now it's time to move on to tip number 5. I don't know if you can tell, but I really like teaching English and I'm having a ball. I hope you're enjoying this lesson too. Here we go. Tip number 5. Practice chunking information. In other words, group related ideas together to make them easier to follow. Think about it. In this lesson, I'm helping you understand important tips to help you be more clear and more concise. I'm not teaching you 5 English words. I'm not teaching you 3 English expressions. I'm not teaching you 2 idioms. No, our focus for this week's lesson is how you can speak English clearly and concisely using these 7 tips. We're speaking about English fluency. One focus, one topic. Makes sense, right? Chunking information. So how can you do this as an English learner? Here's the first thing you can do. Organize your speech into logical sections of related information. Logical sections of related information. My friend, I hope you understand. I'm gonna actually pause my lesson really quickly just to encourage you. I hope you realize how intelligent you are. I know English is challenging. I know that you've learned lots of words and it's frustrating when you get to a situation and you can't find them, but I need you to realize you're intelligent. And the main reason why you've struggled is because no one has taught you about organizing your thoughts, about the importance of being logical when you're speaking English. Not about using 5,000 words. It's about using the right words in the right context at the right time. Logic is important when you are trying to speak English fluently. And I want you to realize that. And you're intelligent. You are a logical person. You can do it. So element number 5, back to it now. Organize your speech into logical sections of related information. Another thing that's powerful is use pauses between chunks to help listeners process one set of ideas before moving to the next. So let's say, for example, I'm telling you my favorite foods, right? And I say I have 3 favorites. I have first Indian, then Thai, then Mexican. And I start talking about Indian food. I remember the first time I had Indian food. Honestly, I really do. I remember my friend in high school, her mom made this egg, I think it was egg drop soup or some kind of egg curry. Amazing. Burned the mess out of my mouth, but the flavor, absolutely delicious. And I'm telling you the story about Indian food and how I first had it and how delicious it was. Then I pause. Indian food? Ooh, absolutely amazing. But let me tell you now about Thai food. I paused for a moment to let your brain know, okay, we finished with this section. Tiffany told me a short story about her first time eating Indian food. Her friend's mom made this egg curry that was so delicious but spicy. Now it's time to move to Thai food. Again, pausing for a moment to give the person's brain an opportunity to say, hey, this chapter's done. Now it's time to move to the next chapter. Listen. Being clear and concise. This proves and shows that you can speak English fluently. Here's the third way you can do this. Create clear verbal transitions between chunks to signal when you're shifting to a new group of ideas. Think about it. I told you about the Indian food experience I had. Then I said, now let me tell you about Thai food. I transitioned, verbal transition. Now I'm stopping what I was saying. Now I'm moving to Thai food. Verbal transitions are important. So again, tip number 5, practice chunking information. Tip number 6. And these are tips, listen, my friend, these are tips that even native English speakers have to implement, have to utilize. Why? You don't just automatically become an amazing speaker, just out the womb, as soon as you're born. You learn. And I'm saying this because even native English speakers, we have to learn how to speak English fluently, just like you learned how to speak your language fluently. I'm teaching you the principles, the methods, the strategies that we as native English speakers have to follow in order to speak English fluently. If I just start using random words, you're not going to watch me anymore. You say, Tiff, I don't know what you're saying, but I know how to speak in chunks. I know how to use transition words. I know how to teach you in a way that is logical, and you're going to be able to speak the same way. Tip number 6, eliminate redundancy. I like this word, actually. I like pronouncing this word. Eliminate redundancy. You like that? Say redundancy. Good job. All right. So say things once clearly instead of repeating the same idea in different ways. Now, there are certain periods of time when it's important to say the same thing in different ways. You're trying to emphasize something. You're trying to teach something, which is what I'm doing. But in general, it's important to say what you mean and say it clearly. Let me explain how you can do this. Again, we're on tip number 6. How can you do this? Review your speech for instances where you say the same thing multiple ways and choose the clearest version. Let's say I've said, oh, Indian food is amazing. Indian food is awesome. Indian food really matches my taste buds. Okay. Well, really matches my taste buds is a bit clearer than amazing, awesome. It helps the person know, Tiff likes well-seasoned food. Tiff doesn't mind spice. Why? I said it matches my taste buds. All right, so pick the clearest version. The second way you can do this is replace wordy phrases with more concise alternatives. So instead of saying, at this point in time, and again, it depends on the situation, but instead of saying, at this point in time, I could say, now. So I was speaking about Indian food and my first experience when my friend's mom made it, and I said, now let's transition. I could have said, at this point in time, I would like to tell you about Thai food. Now, I'm going to tell you about Thai food. So be clear and concise. The third way is to use precision in your word choice to avoid needing clarification or repetition. Be clear, be concise, know what you want to say, my friend. We're speaking about being clear and concise to improve your English fluency. Tip number 7, create a mental framework. Woo! Man, I love teaching English. Create a mental framework. Use visualization techniques to organize and remember your speaking points. Let's say, for example, you have to give a speech and your speech is going to be about your family. And you want to speak about each member of your family, your father, your mother, your sister, your brother, and then maybe even your dog, right? And you want to speak about them, but you want to visualize it as you're preparing. So maybe your dad will be an apple, your mom will be a banana, your sister might be a grape, your brother might be a walnut. Pick something and then you're visualizing it. Even just now when I said that, it sounded interesting. You're like, oh, huh. So now I'm thinking, okay, the apple, what is an apple? Apple is very strong. An apple is sweet inside, even though strong on the outside. A banana is kind of soft and my mom is really soft and love. You see what happened right there, right? Create a mental framework. Make these connections so when you go to give the speech, apple, banana, grape, walnut. I'm thinking about these things to describe my family. Ooh, even just now, I'm like, wow, it really works. How can you do it? Here we go. Here are 3 ways you can do this. First, visualize your speech as a physical structure or journey with distinct locations for each main point. Let's say I'm going to tell you about my life journey, literally, right? And I want to talk about my experience when I was in South Korea teaching English and also learning Korean, right? For about 10 years, I was there. True story. And I'm trying to take you on my journey. So what's the first thing? Oh, okay, I want to talk about the institute that I worked for. Okay, then I want to talk about my favorite restaurant. Okay, this Korean restaurant with the ajumma and how she used to feed me delicious food in the morning. Then I want to tell you about, oh man, when I used to actually visit my friend. So you see, and I did the mountain. So I'm creating this journey in my mind and also being able to express it to you, clear and concise. Next, you can also do this. Associate key points with familiar objects or places to help recall them smoothly. What fruit did I say my dad was? Ah, you got it. I said my dad was an apple. You see, just that simple connection. Apple, my dad, my mom. Banana, my sister. Great. You see, just those simple connections. I just said it as an example, yet you remembered it. Again, associate key points with familiar objects. We all know apple. We all know banana. We all know grape, right? The third way you can do this, practice walking through your mental framework before important speaking situations. If I'm going to talk about my family, okay, let me remember. Ooh, okay, apple, banana, okay, grape, okay, walnut. And then when I get to the conversation, I'll just naturally start speaking. Why? Because apple, banana, grape, walnut, these are things I see on a regular basis. It's very comfortable. Think of something easy to connect to a challenging topic, and it'll make it easier for you to speak on that challenging topic because you have the familiar things in your mind. Make sense? Yes, my friend, you're so smart. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you want to continue studying with me, you can actually start my course, the 365-day English study plan, where each day for an entire year, you'll get a lesson from me, helping you get to the advanced English level. All you have to do is go to speakenglishwithtiffani.com/365 plan. Again, speakenglishwithtiffani.com/365 plan. My friend, I will talk to you in the next lesson. Change my heart, oh God. You still there? You know what time it is. It's story time. Hey, hey, hey. I said it's story time. All right. I mentioned a few moments ago that I lived in Korea. I lived in South Korea for about 10 years. Now, you may or may not have already known that, depending on if you're new, hey, boo, hey, good to see you. If you're not new, welcome back, homie, good to see you. So I lived in Korea for about 10 years. I taught English and I was a missionary and I also learned Korean. I went to grad school there. So South Korea is literally my second home. Now, as you can tell, I am an African American woman, a proud African American woman. I love being an African American woman. Now, depending on where you're from, you may or may have not met an African American woman before. If not, hello, my name is Tiffany. Nice to meet you, boo. But there are many different views of African Americans that are held by people around the world. Some people who have never met an African American person only know what they've seen on TV or on the movies or what they've heard or seen in a magazine. So I knew this. So when I was in South Korea, again, beautiful skin, it's a different color. When you look at Korean skin, my skin tone is darker than a Korean's. Again, I absolutely love my skin tone. I really do. I actually have a tan right now, true story. I was in Florida, so I have a tan still. And so I love my skin color. There are unique qualities that I have as an African American woman. My hair texture, now again, I have braids right now. This is not my hair. This is actually extensions hair put on my hair. But I have a unique hair texture. It's very, very curly, tight curls. I love it. I can do so many things with my hair. Stay with me. This is part of the story. So there are many different things about me as an African American woman that are intriguing, that are interesting. South Koreans, some have seen African Americans, some have not. So there is a measure of curiosity when you've never experienced someone. When you've never been exposed to something, there is a measure of curiosity. Why is this the first part of our story? One day I was on a train in South Korea, and this was after I had learned Korean, so I could speak Korean fluently. I was sitting on the train, and the train was crowded, and I sat down and I saw a group of teenagers, Korean teenagers. There were probably about 6 or 7 of them. And I was standing. I wasn't sitting. This is how the conversation happened. So I was standing, and they were on my left, about 6 or 7 of them, all boys, I think, all boys. And I was standing there. Again, remember, African American woman, my skin tone, my skin color is different from Koreans, right? Different hair texture. And at that time, I think I had an afro. And I was standing on the train, and I was listening to them. They didn't know I could understand their language. And they were just being kids. They weren't saying anything bad. And then one of them noticed me. Again, remember I said, some people have had interactions with African Americans and some people haven't. Again, the world is vast. I've never had the opportunity or the privilege to meet someone from Mongolia yet. I can't wait to meet them, but I would love to speak with them. So teenagers never, in my opinion, had never seen an African American woman in person. The reason I say that, they're having their conversation, and all of a sudden one of them sees me. And I'll say what they said in English, but they were speaking in Korean. They said, yo, look. Y'all see that lady? It's a black lady. So I'm just standing there. I'm acting like I can't understand. Another kid, oh man, yo, look at her hair. It's so different. They're just being kids. They're curious. They're looking at my unique qualities, my unique characteristic. I've never seen hair like that before. Yo, man. And so they're just talking about me, right? They're looking at me. And now again, I could speak Korean, so I knew what they were saying. But they're staring at me, talking, some smiling. I'm like, wow, man, look at that. Wow, I've never seen that, right? But if you don't understand what someone's saying, you might think they're speaking negatively about you, right? So it got to the point I said, okay, now it's time for me to shock these kids. So I turned and I looked at them, and they kind of paused, only because now this woman is looking at them, but they didn't know I could understand them. And I started speaking to them in Korean. And I said, hey, how are you guys doing? And they were like, oh, she speaks Korean. So again, they're kids. I love kids, right? They're teenagers. We're like 14 or 15, right? And at that time, I was in my mid-30s, and I was like, hey, how are you doing? They're like, oh my goodness, you speak Korean. Again, when it comes to someone who has never been exposed to you or your culture, instead of being offended, it's an opportunity to share with them what makes you special. So I was talking to the kids, and they were like, how do you speak Korean? So I'm like, I've lived here for a while. And I said, okay, you guys are curious. They're like, yeah. And we proceeded to have a conversation for about 5 or 10 minutes before I got off of the train. In that moment, I shared with them some things about me. I asked them about who they were. I asked them, hey, how was your day at school? And I helped them realize, yes, we might look different from each other. Your skin is one color, my skin is another color, my hair texture is one, and your hair texture is another. But we're still people, and we still can connect. It was the best interaction, and I think I might have changed their life, because up until that point, they had never seen an African American woman in person. Maybe they saw one on TV. Maybe they saw one in a magazine. Maybe they saw one on their cell phone. But now they had an actual interaction with an African American woman in real life. And we both, all of us, enjoyed the conversation. So I wanted to tell you this story because, again, I love kids, and I loved our interaction, and I love helping them understand more about the world. But I told this story also for you. You might be in a situation where someone misunderstands you. Maybe they say something to you because they are not familiar with your culture, or they've never experienced you as an individual. Instead of being upset, give them an opportunity. Give them the privilege of learning more about you. Why? Because you're special, you're unique, and they need to understand that. I'll talk to you in the next lesson.